Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This one is entitled Karate. Yep, that karate. It turns out Uncle Jay knows karate and seven other Chinese words. Right. Yeah. Actually, believe it or not, God, I got to think back. I might have been in, the fifth grade. We're going to say about 1990. No, 89, 90, somewhere in there. I actually took karate. How did this particular old war story come to mind? It's actually a funny story, the way it came to mind, because I had pretty much completely blanked this out of my mind over the years, because it wasn't something I'm glad I did it, but I didn't really enjoy it either. Anyway, it so turns out, I'm sitting in the basement here, and I got the new TV set up and all that, and I put my heart and soul into that for about a month, and everything's set up, everything's working great, and the wife and I have come down here and we've enjoyed it. Movies today, I don't watch movies, period. I know of some, but I remember people telling me over the years, "Oh, you got to see that movie. You got to see that movie. You got to see that one. Did you see it yet? Did you see it yet? You got to see that movie. You got to see that movie." I'm like, I don't have time for that. I don't have 2 hours to throw away to watch a movie, because what am I going to get out of it? The enjoyment of watching the movie? Okay. Is it a movie I'm going to want to watch time and again? No, I don't have the 2 hours to start with. And what street cred am I getting for that? Oh, you remember in the movie when the title character said, "Fuck are you?" It's like that. What does that have to do with real life? It was a fucking movie. It was made up shit. But anyway, getting back to karate, I had thought about that because people, like I said, over the years were telling me, "You got to see this movie, you got to see it." And I started watching them, and we're talking about shit like Jurassic Park. That movie was horrible, horrible, horrible. Another great one, Forrest Gump. "Oh, I've seen it 15 times in the theater already." You have? Well, guess what? Stupid is as stupid does, sir. Fucking asshole. Stupid shit. What was that? Brokeback Mountain shit? What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? You know when movies were good? When I was a kid. In the 80s. What did we have? National Lampoon's Vacation? Where they go to Wally World? A lot of people have seen that movie. How about, you may have heard of this one, Ghostbusters? One of like the biggest fucking blockbusters ever, and countless others. We were thinking of 80s movie titles because our local library, see, I live in New York, as you know, and we pay dearly through the nose for everything. I mean fucking everything. Do we overpay for everything? And how, as the saying goes. In exchange for that, we get this thing called services. That means they come and they plow the street of snow, they collect the garbage, sewer lines, stuff like that. Leaf removal in the autumn. If leaves fall on the road, they get rid of that. They will cut the grass, the town property across the street. They do shit like that, and we get other benefits as well in our local library. Now, a lot of libraries nowadays have a media room where you can take out DVDs or Blu-ray discs or anything like that, audio CDs, whatever they have for you available. We have a very large selection. And the whiff said, "I'm going to the library. Do you want a movie?" So we thought of 80s titles The Karate Kid. Then there was The Karate Kid 2 and 3. And then there was like the new Karate Kid. And then like a couple others and shit. Anyway, it so turns out that that was the movie that we chose. I don't remember anything about that except that it was on in the 80s and Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off. That's about the extent of what I know from the movie. So I said, you know what? Now that I'm old and shit, now that this project is done, let me enjoy the fruits of my labor. So she got the Karate Kid, we pop it in, and we watch the movie. And I sat through 2 hours and however many minutes of it, and I watched it, and I enjoyed it. And I learned a few things that I never realized, that Mr. Miyagi was Arnold on Happy Days. I never put 2 and 2 together, because I never really watched the movie. And I'm like, that's the guy from Happy Days! You know, so I learned shit like that. Okay, is that enough for me to sit down and watch a movie? Not really. Oh, and there's contingency issues and continuosity. What's the word I'm looking for? The storyline, things happen differently throughout the story because of how shit is filmed and edited together and that. In the movie, if you ever saw the movie, in the beginning they got this old station wagon and they go out to California. Well, anyway, the battery in the station wagon was dead or dying. And they had to push the car and said, okay, yeah, all right, let off the clutch. Now, you could do this with a manual transmission, but then in a later scene, it's got an automatic on the column. You can't push start an automatic. Get your shit together, people. And this was happening in the 80s. Even then. That's how it goes. But it pisses me off because I notice shit like that. But anyway, how does this tie into karate? Yes, like I said, 89 or 90, my mother enrolled me in a karate class. How, why, what, where did this, what? Not sure. I don't know how this really came about or how I was forced into it. Oh, I think I know, it was cheap. That's how. If I recall, the way this worked was a coworker of my father, his wife, they had 4 kids, I think. And they said, you know, the mother of those kids would talk to my mother and said, oh, I put Thomas in karate. So my mother said, well, maybe I should put Jay in karate. How much is it? What's the deal? Okay, it's at the high school in my town, which was the next town over from us, so certainly not far. And it's, I don't know, $30 for 13 weeks. I don't know what the fuck it was. It was some like ridiculously cheap amount, because otherwise they wouldn't pay for this shit. And it was not a... It was not a, I got to take the kids to soccer practice and then I'm going to run off and let them play and kill themselves and come back with Starbucks for the crowd. Okay, it's not like today. My mother would drive me there. I was 12, 11, 12, something. My mother would drive me there, and then they would sit and they would wait and they would watch and or talk amongst themselves. Nobody had fucking phones in those days, so that was nice. And that was it. And it went for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I don't really remember. And I had the karate suit or outfit or uniform or whatever you call it. And I learned something about karate belts. And, you know, oh, he's a black belt in karate. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it turns out that as you practice this martial art more and more, you are thrown to the ground or fall on the ground or what have you, and the belt gets soiled. And you go from having a white belt, which I had to start with, and then you graduate to getting a stripe around it, or two stripes around it, maybe three, I can't remember. Then you graduate to a different color belt, which would probably be, I don't remember, I didn't do any research on this, maybe a yellow belt, because that would be the least soiled, the least dark of the colors. And then it extends all the way on till you're a master at it. You've been in the mud so many fucking times, and now your belt is black, and that's why it's a black belt. Yeah. So I don't remember anything about it except for a couple of little things. I remember it wasn't... I didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't my thing, but it was something that would keep me busy, or so, like I needed this. I think it was on like a Friday night, and it was wintertime. I don't remember snow, but I remember cold, really cold. So the only things I remember were one position where you stand there with your hands kind of like at your waist like this, and that was called Jumbie. And I'm like, Jumbie? Like Mechaleka High Mekahini Ho Jumbie? Because that's the only Jumbie I know. But that's what it was called. And there was another kid, and we started talking a little bit, but you paid attention to the sensei. There was this kid, and we had, just a couple of minutes, and he said, hi, I'm Ernest. You can call me Ernie. I'm like, Bert and Ernie? Huh. People don't know what that is anymore. Okay, I'm an old fart. Anyway, I was like, wow, you don't really hear that name much anymore. But his name was Ernie. That was interesting. The sensei happened to have we're going to say 89, a 1989 Toyota Camry, exactly like my father bought in 87. The difference was we had the LE, or luxury edition model, and he bought the DX, or the deluxe version. The deluxe version was basically you're stripped down, you can get a manual transmission, you can get manual crank windows, you can get like an FM only radio, you could get, or an AM FM only radio, you could get no power mirrors, no power door locks, none of that shit. It was just your basic car, where the LE that my father bought has the power mirrors and the power windows and the power door locks and an automatic transmission and this and that and little extras in that. We did not get a cassette player on the radio with that. That was an option, but my father didn't go for it. CDs, I don't remember if they were available, but anyway, we had a connection because he drove one that was an 89 and we had one that was an 87, and it was the same engine and same everything else, and oh, great car, this and that. And it was until we went outside. And I don't know what the deal was with this, but the car was still pretty new. It was like, 2 years old. My father had installed a kill switch on this car for the fuel pump. It was just a way to prevent theft of the car or a thief hot wiring it and stealing it. So he wired this in. And it worked great. There was nothing wrong with it. In addition to that, the car had an alarm with a starter disable, so even if they bypassed that and got the car to actually crank, it wouldn't fire because it didn't have fuel. And it also had a hood lock that had a bolt that would go through a bracket that he mounted to the hood, so even if you pop the hood inside the car pulling the thing, you could not get the hood open and steal the battery out of the vehicle. That was a common thing back in the old days, especially in Manhattan where my father worked. Although he didn't really take that car into Manhattan, there were just a few choice times when he did, back in the day on like a weekend or something, if he was happened to be working a weekend. So anyway, it was cold out, like I said, and the instructions for the car were given as when you leave the vehicle, you lock the hood lock, and that sets the alarm and something else, and you engage this fuel cutoff thing as well. When you would come back to the car after an hour to an hour and a half, or whatever it was that this ran, we would go to the car and my mother would turn the key and the car would crank and crank and crank and crank and crank and crank but not start. And she wasn't completely retarded at the time, and she did disable this fuel cutoff and everything else. Remember, this was a switch. So if you're turning something off that's already off, what's the difference? It's still off. And if you turn it back on before the ignition is turned on and it comes back to life, what's the difference? It shouldn't make any difference, but apparently it did. And it was every single Friday night when we would get back in the car, you turn the key, it would crank and crank and crank and crank, but it just would not start. You let go, you try it again, and it would start right up. Conversely, you could hold the key and leave it cranking, and after it's, okay, for some reason the car isn't starting, maybe I ought to try again, and then you waited like 2 more seconds, it would fire up. I don't know. I can't answer that one. I have no idea. But the guy, the sensei, we had mentioned that, and he says, no, I have not had any problems such as that. Now, was that related to the fuel cutoff or not? I can't remember if I told my mother to not enable that once. Something tells me I said don't use that, and we won't tell Daddy, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully the car will still be there, which nobody was going to take it from my high school parking lot back in the 80s, you know. I mean, they could, of course, but, you know, it was very unlikely that anything would happen. So anyway, that was just an odd mystery. Now, does that... it still has that he still has the car. It still has that system in it. Does it still even work after all these years? I don't know. I never tried to test it to find out myself the few times that I've had it. It's kind of water under the bridge, but that's really all I remember about karate. I graduated to getting a green stripe on my belt, which was the, we can't leave you back, so we'll have to pass you on to the next grade. That's kind of it. Like I said, it wasn't something I really enjoyed. It was something I was just kind of forced into. It was very odd, and this, again, was prompted because I finally saw the Karate Kid movie in its entirety, and now knowing where the term wax on, wax off came from. I am so enlightened after 40 fucking years on this planet, practically, to know that that's where it came from. That's it. 2.5 hours I sat through this movie. What, wax on or wax off? It was a good movie. It was an 80s movie when they used to know how to act and movies were actually decent, and the movie actually did quite well. So it certainly wasn't bad. I'm not upset that I saw it, but what did I learn? What did I get out of it? Yeah, probably next week we're going to watch another 80s movie until we watch the good ones, and then we're not going to do that anymore. But I'll tell you something, with the TV and the sound and everything set up down here, oh yeah, it's the poor man's home theater experience. It really is. And it's quite good at that, I must say. So it at least gives me pride in all of the work that I put in for this project. Anyway, that's it. Just a little fun thing that, yes, I took karate in the 5th grade and I didn't like it. That turned into, I can't even see how much time on it, it's too long. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.